Let's review a couple of these problems that I had a little trouble with last time. Number 18.
Okay.
0, 0 is in the solution set as long as A is greater than B. That is a true statement.
Okay.
If A is greater than B, 0, 0 is not necessarily in the solution set. And that was what was getting you tripped up, and me. Because you're correct. If A is 10 and B is 2, 0, 0 is not in the solution set. But that's not what this question says. This is not an if and only if. In other words, just because it is logical to say that 0, 0 is in the solution set if A is greater than B, doesn't necessarily mean if A is greater than B, 0, 0 is in the solution set. It's like saying if P then Q does not mean if Q then P.
Right.
Sometimes it does. In other words, if I have a right triangle and I tell you that this is a right triangle and that's 3, that's 4, and that's 5, that tells me that it's a right triangle. And this is if and only if. In other words, if I come up with some unknown triangle and it's 4, 3, 5, then that is a right triangle always.
Okay.
So you have if and only if logic statements, and then you have sometimes just that it only works one way. It's conditional. If P, then Q. Doesn't mean
Right.
if Q, then P. All right. And the other one that we were so close, I can't believe I didn't do it. I even said let's do it. Were we running out of time or what? I don't remember, but this one right here. For some reason, I recalled from my precalculus tutoring that you do get a remainder when you divide a polynomial by that. If P of 3 equals minus 2, then when I take my polynomial and divide by x minus 3, I'm going to get a remainder of minus 2. And kind of one way of realizing that is we know that if P of 3 were equal to 0, then 3 would be a factor, right?
Right.
And I would have a 0 remainder. We know that you have to have a 0 remainder for something to be a factor. Well,
Right.
easiest way to prove this, first of all, these two factors here work such that P of 3 equals minus 2. If you multiply those together, now, if I said to you you had to divide by x minus 3, would you be more comfortable doing long division or synthetic division?
I don't know what synthetic division is.
Then let's do long division. Rather than teaching you how to do synthetic division, in general, you don't need to do synthetic division for this test. This test is supposed to be an algebra and geometry test. It's not supposed to be any of the math that you got in pre-calc. Maybe a little trick. But pretty much all the math you need for this test you got by 10th grade, I'm sure. However, do you know how to do long division on this? You would need to know how to do one or the other, for sure. You can't do this problem without being able to do long division. In other words, we need to test this hypothesis. If we divide the polynomial that we had by x minus 3, do we get a remainder of minus 2? Let me show you how to do long division. Always start just dividing the x into the x squared or x cubed or whatever that term is there. Okay, that goes x times. Now multiply that by both terms, just like you would with long division if you had just numbers. Now subtract. Well, that's 0. What's minus 7 minus a minus 3x?
4x.
Minus 4x.
Yeah.
And now repeat, well, bring down the 10, excuse me, just like you would in long division. And now repeat the exact same process. Divide that into that term. Well, I get minus 4. Now multiply that by that, so I get minus 4x plus 12. And now subtract, and you get minus 2. And that is your remainder. And that's the way to do the problem.
So you get x minus, okay.
Yeah, now you have a remainder. And what we know is that if that remainder were 0, then that would be a factor of that polynomial. But it would also mean that P of 3 would have to equal 0, not minus 2. So this is actually, in other words, it doesn't matter the polynomial that I stick in there. I could have had a couple of polynomials that P of 3 would equal 3. The two that they suggest by their first two answers are x minus 5 times x minus 2. If I had that polynomial, P of 3 would be minus 2. But it doesn't have to be that. I could have x minus a number of different numbers here. In other words, I can think of lots of combinations of numbers where P of 3 would be equal to minus 2. Well, every single combination is going to produce a polynomial that when I divide it by this, I get a remainder of 2. All right. In general, I'm not sure quite what's going on with this test, but in general, these seem to be elite problems, all hard. I don't even see a lot of medium ones. Now, maybe that says two things. This is not representative of a true test that you're going to run into, but I'm not sure that matters. In other words, there's nothing wrong with you and I working on the medium and hard problems only.
Okay.
Probably don't need any work on the easy problems, so we would just be wasting time by doing that. Now, why would they give us a practice test here that was all hard problems? Because maybe college readiness sells a SAT prep program.
Right.
And the worse you do on their practice test, the more likely you are to buy their program, right? That makes sense. And so there's certainly reasons why some of these outfits, I went to Kaplan one time and their online tests were ridiculously hard. Top 1% of degree of difficulty of problems. And I didn't understand at first until I realized, oh, they want everybody not to know those, so they have to sign up for their program. So anyway, keep that in mind. But even still, these are good problems to be reviewing. So let's look at number 30.
Problem 30?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have known better. I'm suffering from allergies, and I went out and mowed the lawn and trimmed. Oh, that was a big mistake. So hopefully I won't cough the whole session. But better online than in person, huh?
True. Okay, so which of the following is it? Um,
In other words, answer A almost is correct, right?
It looks like it factors, right?
Well, it does factor to that, but that's not what they're answering. That's not what they're asking. This is actually the x-intercept form of this quadratic. Notice that it goes through 5 and minus 3. That's the zeros of that. What they're asking is, which form of the equation gives you the vertex as constants? And there's a bunch of different forms for quadratics, but the most common one is this one. It's called Vertex Format. Okay? Now, which of those equations looks like this and is in fact, the vertex is at 1, -16?
1, -16. That would be D.
D. The question is, you've done completing the square, right?
Yes.
Let's do completing the square on this. Again, I haven't seen a whole lot of SAT. You are taking the SAT, not the subject test. Is that correct?
Yeah, the SAT.
Okay. Well, let's go over completing the square. And what was that? It was -15. Yeah. If we want to get this in vertex format, which is what that is, then we will have it where the constants represent the vertex. In other words, if we can put this into this format, we'll have their answer, and it'll be this right here. In order to complete the square, you separate all the terms that have x in them, and you set this -15 off to the side like that. Now complete the square inside the parentheses.
Plus 2x.
No, you take half of the coefficient only.
Oh, so 0.5.
No, half the coefficient is 1.
Oh, 1.
Then you square it, so you add 1.
Okay.
Okay?
I'm talking about the coefficient of the entire...
No, coefficient of the x term only.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter whether you use -2 or 2, because when you square it, it's always going to be a positive there.
Right.
Now I've changed the equation. I wrote +1 in there, so I have to subtract 1 to balance it. Now, because I completed the square, I can write that like that. Adding these two together gives me that.
And then -16. Okay, well, yeah.
The vertex format for that quadratic. In other words, here's the quadratic. Also happens to be this, but it's not the vertex format. That's the x-intercept format.
Okay.
Okay, let's see here. And now we have the grid questions for this part. Let me read it. Wow, they only want A possible.
Okay, so at least 12 doesn't, so...
You have your calculator in front of you?
I I can wait. It's right here.
You need to get it, yeah, because you're going to want to use it on some of these, I imagine.
Why? Husky, 12,000 ears of corn per hour. At most 18.
If he did it at the slowest possible speed, how many hours would it take him?
Well, his slowest rate is 12 per hour.
Well, let's assume he works at that rate.
Okay.
How many hours would it take to do 72 dozen ears of corn?
So 12 per hour, 72 per x. So, so 6 hours.
Correct. That's at as slow as possible speed. Well, what about the highest possible speed? What would it be?
4 hours.
4 hours. So somewhere between 6 and 4 hours. And they said, what is a possible amount of time? Well, you could give 4 hours, you could give 6 hours, you could give 5 hours. At his slowest possible rate, it's going to take him 6 hours. At his fastest possible rate, it'll take him 4 hours. Somewhere in between those two numbers. And they didn't even make it tough by saying, what is a possible amount of time? They could have at least said, what's the minimum amount of time?
So there's like a lot of answers to that question.
Ton, yes. Which makes you wonder how they're going to score it.
Yeah.
I mean, how do they handle, what if somebody puts in 4.1 or 4.1268?
Well, that's not correct, I guess.
I would think that would require a human to grade that, but maybe not. All right.
And say, what is the least possible?
Yeah, that would have been a better question. Then there's only one answer.
Right.
The way they worded it, there's all kinds of answers. All right, number 32.
Wait. So x plus, so 4,500 plus 14x equals 6,000.
Yeah. Or you could even look at it conceptually a little different. If the driver and the van weigh 4,500 pounds, then I've got 1,500 pounds to play with, right?
Right.
I can only have 1,500 pounds of boxes.
Right, so now we're just adding an extra step.
Well, kind of. Not really. That maybe I had to put the extra step by subtracting 45 from 6,000, but it gives you the same equation as you came up with, basically.
Yeah, and the answer is 100%.
Toughest part about a problem like this is there's so many words, it takes you 30 seconds to read it and then figure it out, and it's an easy problem, as they almost always are when there's lots of words. So again, don't make the mistake of automatically putting a check mark by this with the intention of going back. I'd be more likely to work through it no matter how long it took, although in general they say you never want to spend more than 2 or 3 minutes the first time through on a problem. And this maybe could have taken 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes. The thing is, you know you're getting it right if you work through it. It's not like you're going to spend 2.5 minutes and then maybe get it wrong. And there's a big difference there. If you've spent 2.5 minutes on a problem and you still have no idea how to do it, then definitely put, a couple of check marks, or even go ahead and guess if it's multiple choice at that point, so that you don't have to spend the time when when you're almost out of time doing it. All right, number 33.
So in 2010, there were 150. And in 2008, oh no, not 2010, 2011, there were 160. And in 2011, there were, 2008, there were 100 sold. So, 10 16 is 5/8.
Correct. Now, the question is, would they have accepted this? In fact, there's probably not enough room on the grid bar.
You can only put 4
What's that?
characters. You can only put 4 characters.
Yeah, so you have to, you don't even have room for that. 10 16.
No.
So you have to break it down to 5/8.
Yeah. Even though they give you harder questions, the fill-in-the-blank answers are easier because they're limited answers. Well, so are multiple choice, I guess. They're limited answers.
I didn't agree. I think the grid are easier questions. How about this one? 34.
Okay.
Yeah, these are just almost, these are like beginning questions on an order that we haven't seen on any of the other practice tests.
Okay.
Sorry, didn't mean to put pressure on you.
So 48 divided by, that's a really easy one, 48 divided by 30. No, 48 divided by 0.5.
Which is?
Divided by 0.5, which is 96.
Okay. Oh, just more grid questions.
Wait, what's the cylinder? Cylinder is that's area times height, correct?
Yeah, and that's one of the formulas they give you. In other words, the SAT does start out each major math section by giving you 10 pictures with their formulas, and one of those is the right cylinder. And that's definitely how you want to start this problem out, is with the general equation. In other words, if you start, in fact, almost all geometry problems should be started with the general equation. That's the area of the base, that's the height. And now just solve. In other words, what's the volume? 72 pi. They give us that. They give us the height.
Diameter.
So
the diameter is 6.
Pi's cancel. Yeah. R squared is 9, making R.
They're trying to trick you because they're trying to trick you with radius and diameter.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people will answer 3.
Right.
Because you kind of have to figure out the radius. We're not used to figuring out diameter from these equations. Everything is about radius. Okay, 36.
Okay, so this is just manipulation. I
Well,
think.
yeah. In other words, it's hard to spot what makes the denominator 0. That's where it's not defined, right?
Right.
We can't really figure it out when it's in this form. In other words,
Wait, well, what makes the wait a second. Think 5 would, wouldn't it?
no,
No, 4.
that would make that 0, and it would make that 0, but we'd still have a 4 over here.
Right. All right,
What do
never
we
mind.
need to do? What do we need to do?
We need to,
Simplify that denominator. Start
right.
combining stuff, and then see if we can produce a quadratic that we can figure out the zeros.
So should we
Everything
distribute the 4 and
there. We need to expand that, we need to distribute that, and then we need to simplify. So first expand that. And, you know, I don't know how you would expand this, whether you would FOIL it, but
you could do
it's something you want to memorize. You want to know what a minus b squared is.
What's the difference of squares?
No, it's not really. No, that would be x squared minus 5 squared. But a minus b quantity squared is always a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So if you do it that way, this way, you'll save like 30 seconds over foiling it. And likewise, the other half of this to memorize, you want to know what a plus b squared is. In other words, these two things you have to do so frequently, not just for the SAT, but in all of math. I mean, how many times do you have to FOIL a binomial? And those are the two answers. So what does x minus 5 squared equal?
X squared minus 10x plus 25.
Yeah. And if you can do it that way, you save lots of time. Okay. Now distribute that. So I got plus 4x minus 20 plus 4. Now let's combine everything and see what we got. X squared minus 6x
Plus 9.
plus 9. That happens to factor into what?
That factors into x plus 3, x minus 3? Or no, 2x minus 3. So like x minus 3 squared.
Yeah. So what value of x makes the denominator 0?
3.
Yeah. And I was a little curious as to how they were going to come up with only coming up with one answer. I suppose it didn't have to be both the same answers. We could have had a quadratic that had two different answers and either one would work. But in this one, they only had one. Now, yeah, they're not going to let you use a calculator that lets you factor, right?
I think they let you use some. I don't own one, but they allow the TI 84, which does factor.
No,
they just don't allow the
TI 80. It doesn't actually. The TI Inspire does. But the 4,
it's a 94. The Inspire?
Maybe. Yeah, the Inspire definitely factors. But they force you to turn it off when you take the test. You can't take in an open TI Inspire into this test. I've been told that they give you a kind of a special calculator that lets you do calculations, but not much else. So
yeah, there's a mode on the calculator, and they can set it.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But anyway, so you do need to know how to factor. Hold on one second. What happened to question 37? Oh, it depends on this. was having a hard time figuring out what they were wanting on question 37. They didn't have any expression.
Okay, so.
Okay, so she's looking for the value of the account after a certain number of years, and here's what she uses. What is the value of X? Let me refresh your memory. When you are compounding annually,
X is
go ahead.
1.
X is what?
1.
No. Here's the formula. It's your initial principal times 1 plus the rate that you're earning to the t. Well, there's her initial principal. So the x must be 1 plus the rate. Well, they tell us her rate is 2%. You have to put it in a decimal, so 1.02. So again, I can't recall seeing too many questions that require you to know this formula, but this is certainly one of them. If you don't know this formula, there's no way you're getting that. Let me rewrite it better. Your amount equals your starting principal times 1 plus the rate to the t number of years. All right, now let's look at 38. So what is Jessica? What is Jessica?
We have to do her.
Jessica and Tyshawn. So Jessica is going to earn what? And we're going to have to do the math.
It's 100 times 1.02 to the 10 because it's 10 years.
Okay, and what about Tyshawn? What's
you get 100, 1.025.
Correct.
The 10th.
Okay. Now we need the difference in those two numbers. Now, I guess they're going to give you a calculator that lets you do exponentials.
Yeah. Almost every single calculator can.
Yeah. No.
I have like one of the worst calculators and it can even do that.
Okay.
So,
so what do you get for Jessica?
Jessica made
Don't say made, because that indicates that you're talking about just the profit. Say what her account is worth at the end of 10 years. In other words, you want this amount right here. They both are starting with $100, so if we can get their final amounts, then we'll know how much more Tyshawn is worth than Jessica.
0.02 is that to the 10th. It's giving me 1.218994442, and then it has a 20, which I guess is scientific notation. Or?
Yeah, and that tells you that you did something wrong. Okay.
Okay.
First of all, it's 100 times this to the 10th.
Okay, that's what
I would do this to the 10th first. See what you get, multiply it by 100. Multiply it by 100 in your head, but it's not as big, a number as you would imagine.
Yeah, she gets 128. I mean $121. That's her account.
Okay, so that's what it's worth. And it says round off to the nearest cent. So
wait, but I have to find both their account, don't I?
What's that? Yeah, I know, but we need this to the nearest cent. Was it exactly $121?
No, but it was rounded down.
But you need to round it to the nearest cent. You've rounded it to the nearest dollar. In other words, you need at least 2 decimal places.
Oh, okay, wait, I do it again.
And in fact, take it out to 3 decimal places, and I'll show you why. Or even 4. Give me the first 4.
121, 0.8994.
All right, now give me Taishan's.
Taishan made 1.025. 128.0084.
0.0084?
Yeah.
And notice that we could not have answered the problem if we didn't have it to a number of decimal places. And in fact, if we would have rounded it off before we subtracted, we are not getting the right answer, because you're going to have round-off error. So that's why I said go out at least 3 decimal places. Better yet, can you put this number minus that number? That's what you really want to do. In other words, use all the decimal places if you know how to do that in your calculator. But if you use at least 4 decimal places, then you will guarantee that you don't have any round-off error. What do you get for the difference in those 2 numbers? Six point what? Max? I lost you for a moment. You still there? You completely lost you. Yeah, it says you went offline. Okay. You can just log back in to the same meeting ID number when you get it fixed, if you can get it fixed here shortly. But I'll hang around, see if you come back into the meeting. I'm not sure how much of what you heard. What'd you get for a difference there? Yes, exactly. And you can kind of see that had you rounded each one off to 2 decimal places before you subtract, you might get a little different answer. So as long as you go, you may only even have to go 3 decimal places to guarantee that you don't have round off error. But I'm always safe. I go at least 4. But better still, if you have the ability to put one number in your calculator with all of its decimals, subtract the other one with all of its decimals, now you'll be guaranteed that when you round it off, you will not have incurred any round off error. Yeah, well, include as many decimals as you can. Yeah. In other words, if you say take your answer and subtract the other number. Yeah, maybe. Okay. Sure, let's have a look here. That was the last question, and I believe that was the last question of this test. So let me do a little searching, which I hadn't found test number 2 yet, but I'm presuming that at the top it says SAT Practice Test 1, that I'll be able to find test 2. make sure I can, and then I'll call you back. Oops, hold on. Your offline just disappeared. I don't know if that's telling me that you like. No, you're still in the meeting. Yeah, you might. No, I can't hear you through the audio, but we can. Can you see? Oh, okay.
There we go.
There. Okay, cool. I'll hang up the phone.
All right.
Still got to do a little. Let's see what happens if I do this. See if we can get a second test. I've got a bunch of tests in my computer, but they're the old tests. And
I mean, I think they could still probably be helpful.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. If we didn't have anything else, I got no problem using those. But the best thing we can do is find a new. This one says practice tests and sample questions. Let me click on that and see if we can find a second practice test. SAT subject. No, that's not what we want. Just a second. I'm trying to figure out how I ended up getting that first one, where I got it from. Let's see. Practice tests. SAT practice tests. Here we go. This one doesn't say one. So practice test 1. Practice test 2. Here we go. They do have answers. I didn't realize they had answers. That's kind of helpful. No, that'll help us a lot when we run into problems that we can't figure out.
Right.
If we do, hold on, I gotta find the math section. All right, here we go. See these 10 figures?
Yeah.
Notice one of them is that right cylinder, so volume's pi r squared h.
Right.
So you don't have to have these memorized, although I don't know, I wouldn't want to be taking the test and having to be turned back to that page and figuring out which one is which. I'm sure you have most of these memorized. I would actually suggest you do have them all memorized.
Right.
All right, let's look at question 1. Let me blow it up a little bit.
Okay. Okay. What is it?
In other words, there's the hard way, which is solve for x and then substitute it. Now what's 10 times 4/5 plus 3? Well, that's 40/5, which is 8, plus 3 is 11. Okay. Now, sometimes they'll be a little tricky, and they'll give you a question that you don't have to go through all the work. They'll say if 5x plus 6 is 10, what is 15x plus 18?
15x plus 18.
What would it be?
Well, it's 3.
3 times.
Yeah.
So it's 30.
Oh yeah. 3 times
this is
10.
3 times this, which means this has to be 3 times that also.
Right.
Okay. So, and I've seen questions like that, where one is just a multiple of the other, and those are actually really good questions, because the person that notices it gets the question in 10 seconds, whereas the person that has to solve for it maybe takes 40 seconds. equations.
Right.
There's 2 or 3 ways to do this problem.
We could do elimination.
Yeah, to me, I've done so much elimination that it's just so easy that there's no reason not to use it. But if somebody didn't know how to do elimination, what else would work?
Substitution.
Yeah. In other words, you know A isn't right. X plus Y has to equal 0. So these two numbers have to add together to 0. D isn't right. So the answer has to be B or C. Try that point in the second equation and see if it works. If it works, there's your answer. In other words, you could back solve it. But it's so easy to solve by elimination. What's your first step?
Depends on what you want to get rid of, but I guess I'll get rid of 3x. So
It's actually easier to get rid of the y.
okay. So then I'll multiply the whole thing by 2, the whole x plus y.
That's why it's easier, because I got to put a 2 there and a 2 there, but 2 times 0 is 0, so I don't have to put anything over there. Now what am I going to do? In order to eliminate a variable, what do I have to do?
Add.
Correct. I have to add the 2 equations. So
5x
what do I get?
equals 10
Yeah.
divided by 5, and you have x equals 2.
And that actually tells you the answer. It's got to be B, because we had it narrowed down to B and C. So I could have solved for y in the same way by eliminating the x, and getting that would have also narrowed it down. But certainly if you know x is equal to 2 and x plus y equals 0, then y has to equal minus 2. So you can solve for both, but frequently you don't necessarily have to. You know, anything you can do to speed up your answer is all fair in love, war, and SAT test, I guess. You don't have to do it in a way that a math teacher would approve of. That's what I'm trying to say.
Right. It's not about...
Don't automatically dive into the math, which is a hard thing to avoid, because that's what everybody tends to want to do, is dive into the math.
Because it's what we're taught to use.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than maybe techniques that might be a little easier and quicker. Now 3 is actually a really good problem for illustrating something. Go ahead and look at it for a while. Maybe it's not quite what I was thinking it was. No, and in fact it isn't. I was thinking, you know, of the 3 techniques for solving these problems, you have your algebraic solution, you have your back solving, and the third one is picking numbers. Okay? When I first saw this, I thought it was a picking numbers because I saw an N and H, but the clue, the flag that tells you it's a picking numbers problem is if you have a bunch of variables in the question and the same variables in every answer. Well, we don't have any variables in the answers at all, so it's not a pick numbers question. Let's see if we can figure out what it is. He's estimating, this landscaping company is estimating that they need to charge this much. Where N is the number of landscapers who will be working, and H is the total number of hours the job will take using that number of landscapers. So what's the best interpretation of the number 12?
$12 per hour per landscaper.
Yeah, pretty straightforward actually. In other words, the 60 is just an initial cost, but his true cost is going to be $12 per hour to each landscaper for each hour they work. See, I got to be careful here. I actually have an 11 o'clock today, so don't let me go over. And I'm not used to having 11 o'clocks on Saturday. For that matter, 10 o'clocks, but I don't mind it. Don't get me wrong. I love it, actually. I wish I could distribute my workday morning, noon, and night instead of having everything from 3 to 9. I had a couple of days last week where I had like 6 hours of tutoring in a row, and I was fried by the end of it. Let's look at this one.
It's A. No, it's not.
I know, I think you're right. It has to be A. And we only need to check one term, the first term. In other words, when I do this square, the very first term is this term squared, right? Remember what A plus B, well, A plus B is bad terminology to use, but if I have x plus y squared, the answer is x squared plus 2xy plus z plus y squared. Okay? Well, if I use that, what's this term have to be? Has to be 9a to the fourth, right?
Yes.
In other words, I got to square the 3 and I got to square the a squared. Well, this produces the first term. Okay? B doesn't produce the first term because you'd have to take 3 to the 4th power, which is 81. Gives you an a to the 4th, but it doesn't give you the coefficient, the correct one. This one gives you an a to the 4th, but it gives you 81 also as the coefficient.
Right.
This one down here is 9 to the 4th, whatever that number is, 81 squared. So this is actually a pretty easy problem by back solving. And that's how we do it. We don't try to take this and factor it. That would just be hard to do. Okay? Go ahead, Max.
And time consuming.
Yes. Far easier to back solve it, especially when they put the answer as the first choice. Of course, we don't know that. In other words, we can't really check A and then answer that as the answer. We don't really know A is the answer until we've eliminated B, C, and D. It's just very easy to eliminate B, C, and D. All right, I think we got maybe time for one more. Before I die. So they're saying x is 7, right? So we have this equation.
Minus 7 equals 10. Okay, so 2k squared plus 10 equals 0.
No, the 17 is under the radical sign. The 7 is outside of it.
Oh.
So the first thing is let's isolate the radical. In other words, move the 7 to the other side. Now what can you do? Now it's a relatively easy equation to solve. Here's my equation. What's the first step? Second step, we already did the first step.
Square everything?
Correct. So what do I end up with?
You end up with 2k squared plus 17 equals 49.
Okay. Next.
And you subtract 17. And you divide by 2. and then you root. Gives you 4.
Plus or minus. And, you know, a better answer that they could have put on there was minus 4. Ah, sorry, they already said k was greater than 0. I didn't notice that. So even though we do get a plus or minus, we have to choose the plus because that was part of the conditions.
Right.
Okay. But nonetheless, when you solve an equation by taking the square root of both sides, always start your answer plus or minus. Because most people forget it. And they end up with 4. And if they had not put that there and they would have had a minus 4, that would have actually been the answer. So it's not totally trivial. But anyway. All right. So we're on practice test 2. Just getting started. We'll know where to go next.
All right. Awesome.
All right. Have a good one, Max.
You too.